All right. Hopefully I'm getting better at this. Today is the day, everybody. I'm getting ready to switch over to another scene here in a minute. First of all, can everybody hear me? I just want to say that because last time I talked for 5 or 8 minutes and no one could hear what I was saying. So that needs to be addressed before anything else. So if you're in the chat there, say yes or whatever. So, but I will continue until I hear. I'm going to switch over to a view where we can actually watch the impeachment proceedings up in a corner, and I'll be shoved off to the side, where it'll be just kind of watching it. And if there's questions, I can answer them. If something happens, we can all just watch together. I think that's a thing that people do. Well, it will be after today, if not. So, at some point when there's a lull in the action, because right now Republicans are on the House and they're trying to delay and gum up the works with different procedural problems and delays and motions for calling into question the actions of Adam Schiff and Jerry Nadler, and just generally being nuisances. So when they go to votes and stuff, we can BS. But when they do that, I also want to read some of this 6-page letter that I actually have not read yet. It will be a live deal where I read it. The 6-page letter, the screed that Donald Trump sent to Nancy Pelosi. So apparently he forewent. He ignored the advice of counsel and just wrote the letter himself, and I'm sure he had somebody proofread it and everything, but he didn't have a lawyer draft it is what I'm hearing, which should be some entertainment because everything that I've read about the letter reporting has said that it is just filled with insane lies that really shows that he doesn't have a fundamental understanding of what went on with Joe Biden in Ukraine, with all of the conspiracy theories, that he just has like a surface level understanding of just the most cursory facts, and everything else it doesn't go any deeper than that. Which shouldn't surprise anybody, but it is nice to see. The other thing that I think is alarming about this letter is the fact that this is from the White House. This is a letter from the President of the United States of America that is filled with easily verifiable lies. That should alarm everybody. So anyway, let's get over to this other view here, and we will see what is happening on the House floor. If I need to turn the volume down on the C-SPAN feed or turn it up, just let me know. I don't want it to be a distraction while I'm talking, but I also don't want it to be so low that no one can hear it. So we'll switch over there.
Impeachment of the United States president is so consequential that it's only been done 3 times previously in our nation's history, all based on legitimate evidence of criminal behavior. Unfortunately, many of my colleagues have diminished what should be a solemn and grave proceeding into an absolute political circus, simply because they don't like the man occupying the White House. Many Democrats have been intent on impeaching the president since the day he took office. Their actions are clearly motivated by hatred for President Trump. This impeachment vote today is the next step in their long-held plan to remove him from office. The partisan impeachment investigation run by the House Intelligence Committee was unnecessarily held behind closed doors in a room designed to share classified information. Nothing classified was shared during these meetings, but the result of this decision was that most members of Congress and all Americans were blocked from hearing the facts for themselves. Chairman Schiff repeatedly withheld crucial information from the Republicans, including the ability for anyone but himself and his staff to speak with the whistleblower at the center of the investigation. He was even called out by liberal media outlets for spreading misinformation and falsehoods throughout the impeachment process. The public hearings were complete disregard for the House rules and the decades of precedent. Republicans were not allowed to call witnesses or to make basic parliamentary motions. In fact, the only witnesses allowed to testify publicly were those who fit neatly within the Democrats' predetermined narrative. Most importantly, we have not been presented any real evidence that proves the president is guilty of high crimes and misdemeanors as required by the Constitution to remove a duly elected president. If there were criminal activity, as many of my Democrat colleagues claim, then why are there no crimes listed in the articles of impeachment? We are forever weakening this body by turning impeachment into a political weapon. This impeachment scheme is nothing more than an attempt to conduct a taxpayer-funded opposition research and damage the president's electability heading into 2020. The American people see right through this charade and are fed up. It's time for this madness to stop and for us to get back to the important work the American people sent us here to do. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from New York.
Mr. Speaker, I now yield 3 minutes to the distinguished gentleman from California, Mr. Lieu.
Gentleman is recognized.
I want to hear Ted Lieu, and then we'll talk a little bit.
Thank you, Chairman Nadler, for your leadership. Let's start by making this very simple. No one in America could do what Donald Trump did and get away with it. No American elected official can call up a foreign government and ask for an investigation of a political opponent. No member of Congress can call up a foreign official and ask for help in our re-election campaign. If we did that, we would likely get indicted. No one is above the law, and the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. I first swore an oath to the Constitution when I joined the United States Air Force on active duty. And the oath I took was not to a political party or to a president or to a king. It was to a document that has made America the greatest nation on earth. And that document contains a safeguard for when the president's abuse of power is so extreme that it warrants impeachment. We're not here because of policy disputes. While I disagree with the president, I acknowledge he has a right to restrict the number of refugees entering our country. He has a right to eliminate environmental executive orders. He has a right to sign a bill that has given tax breaks to the wealthy. But the president does not have the right to cheat and to solicit foreign interference in our elections. That is illegal. It is not what the voters elected him to do, and we will not stand for it. The president's actions in this case were particularly insidious because he also used our government for his private gain. He conditioned taxpayer-funded military aid and a critical White House meeting with the Ukrainian president on the requirement that Ukraine publicly announce an investigation into his opponent. And by harming Ukrainian national security, the president also harmed U.S. national security. And then the president solicited foreign interference again on the south lawn of the White House when he again asked Ukraine to investigate his political opponent, and then he asked China, our peer competitor, to do the same. That abuse of power is not acceptable. Whether or not the Senate convicts, the House has an independent duty to do the right thing. That's why we have passed over 275 bipartisan bills that are stuck in the Senate. Whether impeaching or legislating, we will continue to be faithful to the Constitution regardless of what the Senate may or may not do. Moreover, impeachment is a form of deterrence. Our children are watching. No president ever wants to be impeached. And whether Donald Trump leaves in 1 month, 1 year, or 5 years, this impeachment is permanent. It will follow him around for the rest of his life, and history books will record it. And the people will know why we impeached. It's all very simple. No one's above the law, not our commander-in-chief, not our president. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.
So I wanted to listen to that and some of this. Like, this is Doug Collins coming up next from Georgia. Certainly not someone I want to listen to yammer on in his auctioneer. The co-host of my podcast says that he's trying to sound like a human banjo with the way he talks. Very fast and like somebody's picking him. Anyway, so what is happening? I mentioned it briefly. What is happening here today? They're not expecting a vote on the actual articles of impeachment until later this evening. Later this evening for the East Coast, 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock. On the West Coast here in the Los Angeles area, obviously that would be 3 or 4. But I wanted to answer some questions. I'm sure there's questions that you may have about what is happening, about what is getting ready to happen after this, the vote, which will absolutely result in Donald Trump's impeachment. That it will send it to. It'll send it to the. No, somebody's saying no sound. Well, it looks like I have sound. So, what will happen is it'll go to the Senate for a trial. So, anyway, I appreciate the super chats that were sent. That is fantastic. In fact, let me cut back to just my regular live camera look. So, if you do have questions, the chat seems to be moving relatively slowly, so that's great. I will take those. There are a few people who are saying no sound. Somebody thumbs up if you can hear what the words that are coming out of my stupid face. Okay, you have sound. Good deal. So, I don't know whether I want to read this thing, this 6-page letter, or get to some questions. Like I did last time, put a couple of question marks in front of your question. So when I'm looking down the screen here, I can actually read that you're asking a question and not just making a comment or something to that effect. Why wasn't Trump impeached for more stormy and emoluments? That is a question from Nos Nitrous. It's a great question, and it's actually the beef that I have with these articles of impeachment. I understand that they have there's a lot of moving parts relative to impeaching a president, relative to the process. But I've been very vocal about the fact that I think this was taken on too quickly. The investigation wasn't thorough. It clearly wasn't even as thorough as the Mueller investigation. Mueller refusing to have the president sit for an actual in-person interview, an actual in-person deposition. Well, it looks like the House is doing the same thing. The House isn't asking for John Bolton's testimony. They're not forcing the issue of getting Mulaney in there. There are several other individuals that they are not having come in for testimony. That's a mistake as far as I'm concerned. Now, listen, they have another crack at it when they get this and it's a trial in the Senate, but then they have to work around Senate rules relative to which witnesses the Senate, i.e. Mitch McConnell, is going to allow. You have a whole nother body there with procedural and parliamentary rules that aren't in the House. When you have a majority in the House of Representatives, you should have dealt with it then. The other thing is only 2 articles of impeachment. It's a great point. Not just the Stormy Daniels thing, which isn't the fact that he was having sex with a porn star while his wife was pregnant and with, having a baby, but the campaign finance violations, the violations of the law. That's one issue. But also the emoluments clause, which is now, it is working its way through the courts. But impeachment isn't a criminal matter. It's a political matter. But more importantly, I think we have direct evidence through the investigation of Robert Mueller in volume 2 of his, 448-page report that there were crimes, there was obstruction of justice, not just obstruction of Congress. So it perplexes me, the route they're taking. I understand the argument that, our election is at stake, and if we wait, then another election is going to be put in jeopardy. I get that. But we increase our likelihood of removal the more evidence we gather. More hard, irrefutable evidence that the Senate is not going to be able to deny. So I think some mistakes were made. Ultimately, we're here. I mean, today's the day. But, who am I? I obviously they're on the ground there. But, it's disappointing. I know enough to know that a lot more could have been done here. Any other questions here? Ms. Toronto, I would love to see this drawn out. The longer it goes, the longer it has to embed itself in the minds of average Joe. It needs to get in their heads that this guy's a crook. That is exactly my point. We are simpatico in that. Kay Claimer, how many other times in life have you seen an innocent man refuse to allow testimony from people who could possibly or potentially exonerate him. In my law enforcement experience, I've never seen that. Yeah, if you got witnesses, listen, if you're accused of robbing a bank and you get brought to trial and you've got buddies that can assert an alibi, they can communicate and verify that you were not there, you weren't even in the country able to rob that bank, you wouldn't refuse to allow them to go see investigators. You wouldn't deny them the ability to clear your name. You would say, get the hell over there. Talk to the cops. Talk to the district attorney. Let's put this thing to bed. And that's not that's not what's happening. And once again, it is a situation where Republicans would like us to suspend reality. Republicans would like us to believe that all of these Americans who have dedicated their lives to service to the country on both sides of the aisle, both the Republican side and the Democratic side, and then also just career diplomats and public servants, that they would jeopardize their standing, jeopardize their jobs to lie on Donald Trump, to lie about Donald Trump, to for some reason throw their life into a whirlwind for 6 seconds of fame. But they're lying. But all of the witnesses that Donald Trump is not allowing to come and who are choosing not to come testify, they're the ones who are truthful. They're refusing lawful subpoenas. Those are the honest ones. Come on. It just doesn't wash. All right. Well, we'll switch back to the other stream. I'll probably just leave that on. I don't want to be jumping back and forth and pissing everybody off, but yeah, this is a big day. I don't think it can be overstated just how important this day is, just how momentous it is from a historical standpoint. We have Andrew Johnson, the man who followed Lincoln. He was impeached, not removed. Richard Nixon was almost impeached, but he quit before they could. So he wasn't. He doesn't count. And Bill Clinton, who was impeached but not removed. And for the record, I think he should have been removed. He didn't just lie about sex acts. He lied under oath. He rose his right hand and swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury. And he lied. I don't care what it was about. He lied. Any of us do that, we go to jail. So, and he also, I think he was a predator relative to his job. And Coney. I messed up your name last time, Coney. I remember. So let's switch over and see what is happening. And then
direct evidence kept coming after the call. More texts, more emails, more calls.
This is Deutsch from Florida, I believe. Oh, it probably says it right on the screen. Yeah, from Florida, the 22nd District. I believe that Deutsch represents Parkland, where the shooting took place. Let's turn it up.
In their war against Russia. American presidential power comes from the people through elections. And the Constitution requires that we protect those elections. But when the president abused his power to solicit foreign interference, he was cheating American voters before they even had a chance to vote. President Trump's actions force us to protect our elections and the Constitution. I urge my colleague to defend the Constitution, support these articles of impeachment, and remind the world that in America no one is above the law. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I would remind this whole body that it is more than 8 lines. In fact, there's 4 facts.
All right, we'll turn Doug Collins down. So the question, what do I think, where is the question? What do I think that MAGA Americans will do if Donald Trump is removed? I think that was the question. Let me see. I know there's been a lot of consternation surrounding some of the Republican, man on the street types who are talking about civil war, There was a guy who was interviewed by, I believe, some news outlet. Anyway, he had a shirt that said, Trump 2020, F your feelings. He was like, I've got a 357 that's going to have a problem if they remove my president, feigning that he's going to act in a violent manner. There's been all kinds of talk, and both direct and just kind of intimating that there's going to be a second civil war. I think a lot of that is bluster. There may be some isolated pockets, incidences, not even pockets where there's multiple people, but there may be some little incidences of violence. But I think that it is going to be looked at as, understood as just the constitutional process. They'll be bummed that their guy was removed. I think that is unlikely at this point due to the pace here. But I don't foresee widespread violence as a result of the possible removal or even the impeachment of Donald Trump. As a former Republican member like you, by the way, I was a Republican almost 2 decades ago. It's not like I just jumped ship. Jesse, as a former Republican member like you, I left due to Republicans no longer being conservative. Do you find your friends who still like Trump to be tolerable human beings you can converse with? That's so tough. It's such a wide, generalized question because everybody's different. I do have Trump individuals in my life that are decent enough that I can talk to them. But I don't break bread with racists. So if you're a Donald Trump fan still, and you're a diehard, something's wrong with you. It's the way it is. You're either stupid or you agree with his white supremacist ideologies that lead his policy. So I don't have a lot of Republican friends like diehards. I have people that maybe skew conservative. Having said that, like I said, I don't break bread with racists. So I don't find myself in the situation to have a conversation like this. Occasionally, I'll be sitting at a bar, at a restaurant or something, and there'll be somebody at the bar or in the room that it'll come up. And then there'll be a little back and forth. But typically it doesn't last very long. And it's not that I'm super knowledgeable and can just bury them with facts, although that is typically the case. It is, they don't understand what is actually going on. Donald Trump has been railing about read the transcript, but none of these people have actually read the transcript. If they had, we would be looking at different polling data right now because it is clear that Donald Trump did what he did. He said what he said. The president of Ukraine said, oh, yeah, our cooperation, this is great. We're getting ready to buy more Javelin missiles for the use in our defense against Russia. And Donald Trump said, I need you to do us a favor, though. That's clear cut. And not all people, regular people on the street, have the ability to duck and bob and weave verbally and like politicians do on TV, where they answer a different question than what was asked. Normal people don't communicate like that. So they either shut down or just, well, you were going to have to agree to disagree, or they run away. Do I still think there should be an impeachment article for obstruction of justice? Yes. I do believe that, not just obstruction of Congress. Let's see. Have they made an effort to get the actual call off the private server? I think, Al Mullen, I think what you mean you have to ask it again, maybe with expound upon your question. But I think what you're asking there is Donald Trump's call with Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine. Are they going to actually get the voice call and review the actual voice recording of the call? One, I don't know that they know if there is one. No one really knows. There has been veiled references that people have made that there is a recording of the call, but certainly there is a full transcript of the call, not a transcript summary, because there has been reporting by the New York Times and others, I believe the Washington Post, that when you read I don't have a copy of it here. I've got all kinds of stuff printed here on my desk, but when you read the transcript summary, all of those moments that there are ellipses, that it's ... those are actual moments where Joe Biden's name was actually brought up. And they summarized it in such a way when they wrote it and they released it that you don't think that he's actually being spoken about, but he was. People who were on the call have verified through intrepid reporters that he was mentioning Joe Biden. So there is a different transcript of the call that they need to get. And if it's on that server, that top secret code word, top secret clearance server, then that's going to be another battle. But, again, I don't know if I don't know if Democrats have the fortitude to do so. Hopefully they've got some tricks up their sleeve that they're going to pull out during the trial. I really hope that Adam Schiff is the floor manager for the impeachment manager that goes over and tries this in the Senate. He used to be a former federal prosecutor, assistant U.S. attorney, and I think he would do a good job. I think he handled himself very well. He ran the Intelligence Committee portion of the impeachment inquiry very well. Obviously, there are different rules in the Intelligence Committee that allowed him to run it more with an iron fist, let's say, than the Judiciary Committee, which is a freak show with their rules. They allow people just to get up and opine forever and all the procedural delays and kind of a pain in the ass. So if you're just joining us, what is happening right now on the House floor is a lot of debate about the impeachment of Donald Trump, the impending vote that will be taking place this evening, and also procedural delays as a way to slow the process. They could have the vote right now if it weren't for the fact that Republicans keep entering, because they have rules, the minority, there are certain protections of the minority to allow them to try to offer up amendments, and that oftentimes only serves to slow the process. But that's what's taking place right now. They're not expecting the vote until later this evening, 6 o'clock East Coast time. John Call, do you believe Republicans like Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell should be impeached and then charged criminally? I don't know what crime they've committed. They're certainly not good people. But impeachment would be, they would have to be censured and then removed by their own body, and I don't see that happening. Let's listen for just a little bit.
Sports on a laptop during official Judiciary Committee proceedings to impeach a sitting president. It won't be using expletives to refer to our president, calling for his impeachment just hours after being sworn into Congress. It won't be using the chairmanship of the once respected Intelligence Committee to distort the president's words in order to mislead the American people. And it certainly won't be using the most serious and solemn powers of Congress to overturn a legitimate national election for political expediency. No, Mr. Speaker, my fellow Republican colleagues and I won't be remembered in history for doing any of those things, because we know this is far too grave a matter for subversions such as these of our democratic republic. We should all be better than this. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.
Reserve.
So this this is something that really fascinates me about Republicans, that you don't really see so much with Democrats. Look, both parties have their problems. Both parties play these games. But I see this way more with Republicans, and that is because they believe that their followers, they believe that their party members are so stupid that they will just be bamboozled by the lies. Like this guy, Newhouse there from Washington State. He says, well, we will not be taking part in overturning an election. That's what impeachment of a president is, guy. And the Constitution outlines the process. Because if a president engages in criminal activity, high crimes and misdemeanors, or behavior that is an abuse of office, or a violation of their oath of office, let's say this happened in month one, which, many believe it did happen. If this happens in month one, do you say, oh, man, I guess we got to wait 3 years with this criminal in office. We can't impeach because that would be bad. No. Our founders wrote into the rule book a way for that not to happen. And just because we have about a year left before the election in 2020 doesn't mean that we just let this criminality go unaddressed. And it's just an odd thing that Republicans constantly do, is bend reality. Because I believe they think that their party members are so stupid that they're not going to see past the subterfuge. Boston Mason, you cannot explain reason to willfully ignorant, unreasonable people. Don't bother, Jesse. Largely, I think that's very true. And it's more true today with the way the fake news culture, screaming fake news and everything. There's that one clip. I did a video about Emma Vigeland, or however you say her last name. I don't know her personally, so I don't watch a bunch of Young Turks, so I don't know her name, or how to pronounce it. Where she goes up to the lady in Miami, and the lady's like, that's fake news. That never happened. To things that were reported widely, that are on camera, Trump doing. And never before, certainly in any of our lifetimes, has there been an occasion where that is the case. Where you can just say, nope, that didn't happen, when it clearly happened. It's on tape from multiple news outlets. And that's what's happening now. People have an out. And I'm not even talking about these Q conspiracy ding-dongs. I'm talking about regular, average people who live normal lives and have normal thoughts in their heads. Sidney V. Trump, all the Republicans, sure, but over half the Democrats should be removed for complying to this criminal regime. I don't know exactly what you're talking about. Let me assume what you're talking about, Sidney. When Democrats agree to work with the administration on certain legislation. We cannot, as Democrats and as elected officials, let's say, they can't just let the government and their country grind to a halt when progress has to be made. So, for instance, with Donald Trump and the Second Chance Act, or whatever it was called, the criminal, the easing of sentencing guidelines, where lots of people were let out of prison. That is a good thing. There are certain things that Donald Trump has inexplicably supported that Democrats were able to get behind and push forward. If they do some easing on prescription drug pricing, that would be a good thing. Why not cooperate with that? Because you can't just sit on your hands and allow for 4 years to go by with nothing getting done. Now, I agree with you. I assume that you would agree with me on this, Sidney, that there are certainly other ways that the Democrats could have, I'm going to use the word obstructed, defied this president's agenda far more aggressively, and I think they should have in many ways. That is kind of the problem with what have now become known as centrist Democrats. People like Nancy Pelosi, people who would oppose Medicare for all or a radical, fundamental transformation of our healthcare system. But I just think it's a little harsh, just a little harsh, to indict half of Democrats for going along with some policy agenda items of the Trump administration. Thank you, Shawnee boy. Love the podcast and the YouTube videos. As an aside, I do a podcast, so I know what they are, but it kind of freaks me out that people think what I do here on YouTube is the podcast. It is not the podcast. In fact, I am able to say what I want to say without fear of demonetization from YouTube. So the podcast is a lot more loosey-goosey. The podcast is a lot more like this, where I'm able to kind of just talk free form with my co-host. I motion over here because she sits across the broadcast table with me. But it is different. So if you listen to podcasts, if you have occasion to, go subscribe to I Doubt It with Dollemore. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever podcasts are. All right, let's take a listen here, and I'll read some of these questions and maybe write some down.
In the position of defining the limits of its own powers relative to the president. Our Bill of Rights guarantees every American the right to confront their accuser, to call witnesses in their defense, to be protected from hearsay, and to defend these rights in court. The Democrats have trampled them all in their stampede to impeach. Even in this kangaroo court, the Democrats' hand-picked witnesses provided no first-hand knowledge the president leaked aid to action. In fact, 2 witnesses provided first-hand knowledge that he specifically ordered no quid pro quo. Any case that charged no...
All right, I'm going to turn that off for a second. I want to address this Sydney thing. I'm going to put this to bed. Listen, it is coming from a tremendous place of privilege, Sydney, for you to say that no agenda item of Donald Trump, even passing budgets to keep our government open, should be endeavored. That no cooperation with Donald Trump. It is a tremendous place of privilege for this reason. Without the government open, there is no welfare. There is no food stamps. There is no Social Security. Obviously, it seems to me you don't rely on any of those services. But how many hundreds of thousands of children will starve because Democrats refused to approve a budget of Donald Trump? There are more things at stake, more people that are outside of your worldview than merely getting Donald Trump out of office. Absolutely, that's a priority. I, maybe as much as anyone else, has been impassioned and a voice for getting rid of Donald Trump, to resisting Donald Trump, to opposing Donald Trump. But to act like you're complicit if you vote for something that Donald Trump ends up signing or cooperating to keep our government open is mighty, mighty privilege. It's just a fact. There are a lot of needy people who rely on government services who would not get those government services without the cooperation of Democrats with Donald Trump. So if you're okay with kids starving, then go right ahead. But there is a country to run while we go through the political process of removing Donald Trump. All right, turn it back up.
Compromised our national security so that he could keep power. Not power for the people, power for himself. In 2016, candidate Trump called for foreign interference when he said, "Russia, if you are listening." In 2019, President Trump sought foreign interference when he needed a favor from Ukraine to intervene in the 2020 elections. President Trump attacked and is continuing threat to our system of free and fair elections. Like all of you, I took an oath to support and defend the Constitution. I urge my colleagues to abide by that oath and stand up to President Trump's abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. To my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, I appeal to your patriotism and implore you to defend free and fair elections and preserve the Constitution. God save the United States of America. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back, and the gentleman and all members are reminded to address their comments to the chair. The gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I do believe, Mr. Speaker, that our elections should be free and fair. I do believe that with all my heart, except it seems like in this case, this impeachment is based on the fact that the Speaker, who said in this month, or last month, it would be dangerous to leave it to the voters to determine if Mr. Trump stays in office. With that, I yield a minute and a half to the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Higgins.
Gentleman is recognized.
Human banjo, Doug Collins from Georgia. Hey, listen, we're going to disagree about things. Going back to the Sidney V comment and the, I believe it's Cash or Clash comment that I'm a joke. Hey, listen, man. I can withstand the slings and arrows that you throw my way because I know where I stand. I know that I'm not a Trump apologist, that I'm not giving him oxygen. I've dedicated and put my livelihood at risk and my, position in America, so to speak, at risk by opposing an autocratic-leaning president of the United States. So I don't need to justify myself whether I'm a joke or not. I don't, and I won't. So we can agree, we can disagree agreeably, but we're gonna disagree on certain points. I love these maps. I love these maps. Look at that map. What is fantastic about that? In fact, I just took a screenshot of a tweet yesterday from someone. Let me find this. It is unbelievable. I don't know that I'm going to be able to really show it. I wish I could. States with lower populations than Los Angeles County. Tell me if you can see. This is probably futile. That is a map of the United States. You can't really see it but the blue. But it's all of these states individually have fewer people in them than LA County, California. It's Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma. I'll just read the ones that don't have. It's California, Texas, Florida, Illinois, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York. Everything else doesn't have as many people as the county just north of me, LA County. So those types of maps are just, they're a ruse. Look, I grew up in Idaho. There's more people within 1 square mile of where I'm sitting right now than in the entire 250,000 square miles or square miles of the state of Idaho. So when they show those maps and it's all the sea of red, nobody lives there. Very few people live there. It's not a representation of where the power circulates, where the will of the people is. Yeah, you know what, Clash? You're right. I do. Within me is a ton of privilege. I walk through this world not facing the issues that tens, hundreds of millions of my countrymen and women face. And I know, and I try to live up to my obligation to stand as an ally for marginalized people. People who have less socioeconomic status and racial status, so to speak, than I do. And look, I hope I'm doing a good job, but I think, going back to Sydney's point, that to not cooperate with Donald Trump and have the whole thing shut down, how many people of color and their children would go hungry? What kind of medical needs would not be met because the government isn't paying for their services? It's easy to say, well, you're a white guy. You're right, I'm a white guy. I don't have any control over that. But I do have control over how I act and how I react, and for whom I stand in the gap. So the privilege, as far as Donald Trump, Democrats denying Donald Trump any movement whatsoever, and this especially goes for the budget, is an argument to privilege. Because what are you going to tell those kids who are hungry, who may die of malnutrition, who may die because critical medical needs aren't met through insurance? What are you going to tell them? Sorry, kid, that your medical need, your chronic medical need wasn't met because Donald Trump's president. We need to resist him. No, the country needs to move on. People have needs, dire needs. Hopefully that's the last that I say about it.
Job we were elected to do. After 3 years of trying, months of unfair, politically motivated impeachment proceedings, Democrats have delivered 2 weak articles of impeachment. Abuse of power? Not according to the Ukraine. President Zelensky confirmed many times that there was no quid pro quo, no action taken, and significant military aid was delivered without anything in return. Of course, his words have been conveniently dismissed. Obstruction of Congress? Is this the new standard? If this is the new stand, then every president since Jimmy Carter and every president moving forward would and will be impeached. Let me be clear. It is an honor to serve in the United States House of Representatives. But today, I am distraught. Today, Democrats will disregard the will of the American people and vote to impeach the duly elected president of the United States. What should be equally troubling is that this has eroded, if not wiped out, the trust the American people have in the 116th Congress.
Gentleman from New
I
York.
yield back.
I reserve.
It's fantastic. How passionate. He is disheartened today. It's amazing how passionate you can be about lies, how passionate you can be to disinformation, that defending a fraudulent criminal who happens to be president of the United States. To stand there and be, oh, I can't believe this is happening. Donald Trump only wanted to combat corruption, even though his foundation, which misused charitable funds that were supposed to go to veterans, was forced to shut down. They signed a settlement agreement to shutter their charity, and none of them are allowed to operate a charity in the state of New York for several years. That's the president of the United States that they're defending. Unbelievable. Who settled for like $25 million for his Trump University fraud, his scam that a court of law found to be fraudulent. But the guy stands there and blusters on. It is remarkable.
Oversight and investigation of the administration. The very checks and balances the framers built into the Constitution so no one branch would have unchecked power. The House of Representatives has no choice but to vote and pass articles of impeachment because President Trump has abused his power and obstructed the ability of Congress from performing our constitutional duty. The urgency to move forward with articles of impeachment.
Here's a good question. Jared, I don't want to screw up your name. Schreckengast. Shouldn't President Trump or his administration be required to justify why every subpoena was blocked? They could invoke the Fifth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. Yeah, it's pretty long tradition that the president, the office of the president, the administration, the executive branch has what is considered executive privilege. So it has been determined by the courts that a president needs to be able to have, I don't believe that Donald Trump absolutely doesn't have this right under an impeachment inquiry, because if they're investigating the man can't determine what Congress should or shouldn't know. That's just the way it is. George Washington said that. But for normally, like a normal president, we'll just use Obama, for instance, should be able to have counsel from his aides, from his assistants, and talk about things in real time to kind of flesh out whether it be international relations or domestic policy, and, kind of brainstorm. Have good ideas talked about, bad ideas talked about, turning bad ideas into good ideas without like a real-time scrutiny from the Congress, because the Congress has their role and the executive branch has its role. It is co-equal branches. They have equality of power. They do have oversight after the fact, but that's not how Donald Trump has used executive privilege. First of all, during many investigations up through his first 2 years, he didn't exert executive privilege. He didn't declare executive privilege. The witnesses who were representing the administration just refused to answer questions relative to, and they said it was some kind of privilege that they had. That's not the way it works. That's not the precedent that's been set, but that's the way they've operated. Completely outside of tradition or institutional norms. Now, where it relates to impeachment, like I just said, Donald Trump doesn't have executive privilege to deny the equal standing of the Congress to investigate his actions. That's not how it works. So, yeah, this is one of the reasons why I believe the Democrats should have slowed this down and gone to the courts. So then you have two branches of government forcing his hand. It's one thing when you deny Congress their lawful subpoena, because what's Congress going to do? Because they have to go back to the Justice Department, and then the Justice Department works for Donald Trump. But when a judge says it, it's a different story. Oh, I love Chris Stewart. Dummy Chris Stewart. Let's listen to him.
Ballot box. I look forward to that day. Let the American people decide.
Members are reminded to direct their comments to the chair. Gentleman from New York.
Reserve.
Madam Speaker, I would remind the gentleman that if President Trump is impeached and removed, the new president will be Mike Pence, not Hillary Clinton. I now yield 2 minutes to the distinguished gentlelady from Florida, Ms. McCarcel-Powell.
I'm sorry. The gentleman yields 2 minutes?
2 minutes.
Gentleladies recognized for 2 minutes.
Madam Speaker, I did not have the privilege of being born into this country. My mother brought me from Ecuador looking for freedom and opportunity, but that's not my story alone. This is a story that I share with so many people that live in Florida's 26th district and all over the country. We've left and experienced corruption in our countries of birth, where brutal dictatorships have choked their potential to benefit those in power. This president, elected by the American people, has violated his oath of office and violated the rule of law. The evidence is overwhelming that he withheld military aid approved by Congress and leveraged a White House meeting to extract a political favor from a foreign government. The president actively sought foreign election interference to benefit himself. It is undeniable that he has abused his power and obstructed Congress. He presents a clear and present danger to our democracy. As an immigrant, I still get chills because I feel so fortunate to live in this extraordinary country. The genius of American democracy lies in our Constitution and the dedication to the rule of law. I want my children and all of our children to feel the same way when they grow up. However, if we sit idly by as cracks begin to appear in our democratic institutions, our children will be in the same situation like so many of us experienced when we left countries whose leaders destroyed democracy. We in Congress must abide by our oath to defend our Constitution. That is my duty as a member of this body. That is my duty as a mother. I yield back.
Gentlemen.
This is going to be how it is for the foreseeable future on the House floor right now, that they're going to be going back and forth with very short speeches in support and in defense of the action that's getting ready to be taken tonight. Somebody asked, what if Donald Trump is impeached? Who's going to take over Donald? Will it be Mike Pence? It's moving too quick for me to see it. Oh, hey, Lenny Velez. Hello, Dollemore. If Trump is impeached, who will take his empty chair in office? Thank you for the question. First of all, let's once again just kind of clarify. If Donald Trump is impeached, then it goes to the Senate, and then they try it, and he will be either acquitted or convicted and then removed from office. Impeachment is kind of a twofold process. So he is going to be impeached tonight, but that doesn't mean he's removed tonight. That means that the impeachment will forward to the Senate where the trial will be held, which will be fascinating. That everybody should check every moment of that out that you can. If Donald Trump is removed, then it would be Mike Pence. And then if Mike Pence is removed or not able to, it would be Nancy Pelosi. And then it goes down the line, President Pro Tem of the Senate, who I believe is probably somebody like Chuck Grassley. The President Pro Tem is the longest-serving majority member. For a long time, it was Orrin Hatch. When I worked there, it was the vile, racist Strom Thurmond. I think it's Chuck Grassley now. But it would be them, and then like Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, it goes down the list. The Treasury's in there. Brutus Magnuson, thank you very much. Someday the U.S. will be respected again. Yeah, I think so. I've talked about this quite a bit, that there is certainly a lot of ground we're going to have to cover to get ourselves in good graces again. It's sad. It is sad that we went from President Obama, who had really effectively a scandal-free administration. I mean, they had the Benghazi and the Fast and the Furious, which really were kind of ginned up to be something more than they were. They were treated like they were more than they actually were. But no indictments. I mean, what happened with the Benghazi investigation? Zero. The Fast and the Furious thing that Republicans went on and on about for years. Nothing came from that. No indictments. Nothing. We go from that, a zero indictment administration, to this, where within weeks of his inauguration, Donald Trump's national security advisor had to be fired because of lies and an FBI investigation, which, by the way, resulted in a guilty plea. Anyway, it's easy to get riled up in today's world, isn't it? Richard Russell is not involving foreign powers to spy. Is not involving foreign powers to spy and investigate American citizens is treason by the United States Constitution. I don't understand. You mean allowing is not allowing foreign power? Oh, yeah. Listen, treason is one of those things that has been, I think, used so rarely in the United States system that people don't really understand exactly when it should be used. It is giving aid and comfort to the enemy. Now, I believe that Donald Trump did commit treason in Helsinki in 2017. When he sat there shoulder to shoulder with Vladimir Putin and said, look, my intelligence agencies tell me this. Putin tells me this. He says he didn't do it. I don't see any reason why he would have. That's giving aid and comfort to our enemy, someone who actually attacked our democracy. Not in a hot war sense. That's why I wear the treason shirt. I get a lot of shit for it. People, it's not really treason. I think it's debatable. Christy Redden. Yeah, there is. There are. Here, there's a website. I have a website you can just go to that'll redirect you. I have to reach my laptop to type. This link I'm putting up is for you, Christy. Tony Rochelle. Why isn't anyone paying attention to the fact he tried to throw a citizen under the bus? He can't just protect the people he likes, investigate all you want, but here in the United States, WTF. Yeah, that's not talked about enough, I think, that Donald Trump, the president of the United States of America, is soliciting a foreign government. Let me back up. Donald Trump, the president of the United States of America, who has the FBI at his disposal, who has the U.S. Department of Justice at his disposal, is asking another country to use their resources, their investigatory resources, their secondarily powerful investigative resources, to investigate an American citizen. If Donald Trump and the Republicans really thought something criminal... Look, I think there's certainly ethical constraints or issues surrounding the Biden situation with the Hunter Biden working there and then Joe Biden having Ukraine in his portfolio. I do. I think that's a problem from an ethics standpoint, not from a legal standpoint. It's just not. But if Donald Trump really thought something criminal went on that needed to be investigated from a corruption standpoint, then dispatch the FBI, send a team of agents to Ukraine, do the investigation, gather your 302s, and do it that way. You don't ask a foreign power to investigate a citizen of the United States. Thanks for the beard comment. I've never understood it's just a little blanket for my face. Plus, when you look like this, you want to get as much coverage over your mug as you can. Let's listen to Sheila Jackson Lee.
Asked for a favor. Those were his own words. In the July 25th call, no mention of corruption, only the mention of the Bidens. The president was engaged in wrongdoing, and it's a clear and present danger. He has a pattern, and his behavior remains a continuing threat to America's national security. The truth is that abuse of power does violate the Constitution, while both corrupting and cheating our American democracy. His acts betrayed the nation. He must take care to execute laws faithfully. This is the truth. Why does the truth matter? Because it matters to the farmer at his or her plow. It matters to the waitress on an early morning shift. It matters to the steel worker building America. It matters to the teacher in a 5th grade class. It matters to a mother kissing off her military recruit going off to war. The Constitution must be preserved. Our laws must be honored and respected. The bloodshed and sacrifice of fellow Americans cannot be ignored, trampled on, or rejected. And today, our actions on the vote taken today must be for no personal gain or grandeur. The bright light of this constitutional democracy has been dimmed because of his acts. The truth is no longer for all. It is for one man, Donald J. Trump. His truth, his way. We must reject that abuse of power because this is not America. No one is above the law. Alexander Hamilton said impeachment was designed to deal with the misconduct of public men and violation of public trust. The president has violated the trust. We must impeach Donald J. Trump.
Gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. At this time, it's my pleasure to yield a minute and a half to the gentleman from Michigan.
And we will turn it down for Banjo Man. I know I'm just waiting for a comment about how I'm impugning the wonderfulness of banjos. Oh, there was a question I wanted to answer here. Let me switch back over. How could Trump run for re-election as evidence piles up for more impeachment offenses? It is an odd thing. I can't imagine being so without shame, so without dignity, to be able to just be in public, not being embarrassed whatsoever, that you are only the third president to be impeached and to continue on and want to run for re-election when this is so clear, so obvious, so corrupt. I don't know. I wouldn't have it in me to run for re-election. But also, there have been some electioneer individuals who really know the system in the states and the Electoral College, and they're saying that right now Donald Trump could lose the popular vote by even more, like 5 million. He could lose the popular vote and still win the Electoral College, but he's going to have to sweep all of those key states. Arizona is one. If you live in Arizona, you need to get your ass out there on Election Day. Get your neighbors, get your family, get your friends, get everybody you know to go out and vote. Because, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, those states again are going to come into play. Florida is going to come into play. North Carolina is going to come into play. All of these states are going to be critical to removing Donald Trump from office because it's likely not going to happen with the Senate unless the Democrats pull some rabbit out of their hat. Cedric Richmond, let's listen to him.
From him. Madam Speaker, I rise today not to disparage and embarrass the President of the United States, but to defend our precious democracy. I speak today not because I hate this president, but because I love this body, the People's House. I have heard Republicans say, why are we rushing to judgment? This is not a rush to judgment. It's a rush to justice, and we must not delay. Corruption is corrosive. It eats away like acid, and the longer we wait, the more time we allow for this president to do irreparable harm to our country and our democracy. Just last week, Rudy Giuliani was back at it in Ukraine. So please don't tell us to wait, because the corruption continues. There's a famous quote that says, politicians worry about the next election. Statesmen worry about the next generation. Today calls upon us to be statesmen and stateswomen, Democrat, Republican, and independent. Our election is under attack from within. So to my Republican colleagues, many of whom spend a lifetime trying to build a reputation of honesty and courage, I beg you, don't throw that away for President Trump. He doesn't deserve it, nor will he appreciate it past the next tweet or next week. My fear, my prediction is that his actions will continue. Madam Speaker, Donald Trump recently said, I can do anything I want. He also bragged that he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and get away with it. Well, he's shooting holes in our Constitution on Pennsylvania Avenue. And our House, the People's House, must defend the Constitution from a domestic enemy to the rule of law, Donald Trump. Because I don't want generations to come to blame me for letting our democracy die, I therefore rise in favor of impeaching Donald Trump. With that, Madam Speaker, I yield back.
Gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you. And then it'll go back to a Democrat. Listen, I'll take a poll from the audience. Somebody's saying that we need a mod, that there's like Trump guy in here, I'm going to vote for Trump again and blah, blah, blah. Unless he's clogging up the chat, I don't mind that there's people who have dissenting views, even if they're terrible, stupid, ridiculous views. I don't know. I'm okay with a little bit of that's why, like clash, disagreeing, calling me a joke. I'm okay with that. Sydney, she had a problem earlier. I'm not saying we need to learn to get along, but, we're going to have to get back to a time where we can disagree with one another. I don't mind if Clash doesn't like me. I've gone my whole life with lots of people not liking me, everybody. And I don't know why I keep effing with my mic here, trying to get it fixed. Ahmad is here. TJ. Thank you, sir. Yeah, listen, people are going to disagree. People are going to, call me names. I mean, if they're being abusive and shit in the chat, then, they need to go. But just posting Trump 2020 a couple times, whatever. They start clogging it to where I can't read or, causing a bunch of heartburn, then that's a different story. And that's all I'll say about that.
That makes this process illegal and illegitimate. What a shame.
Because, let me further say, I could take it. I'm going to get back to, now that I'm kind of getting all this live stream stuff figured out, I'm going to get back to taking live calls on the air, live phone calls like I used to do. And I welcome dissent on my podcast. I welcome dissent. I play voicemails and voice memos from people all the time who disagree, people who are pissed off about things I've said. And I address it. I'm not... what am I, such a snowflake, as they say, so delicate in the things I believe that I can't stand up to a little bit of resistance to my opinion? All of us should be able to defend our positions. It makes us stronger and makes our position stronger, but also maybe somebody has a good point that I could learn from that might change my mind. That's important.
Their oath too. The framers of the Constitution included impeachment as a safeguard against a corrupt president whose misconduct.
Yeah, that would be awesome. My computer's too far away and I'm going blind. Dibrock. If you have a question for Jesse, please use, I think it's just the @Jesse Dollemore so he sees your highlighted message. That would be awesome. That would be even better than my stupid question mark method. Well, Clash, you say I do not like you, but you called me a joke. Why would you enjoy someone that you think is a joke or whatever term you used? Look, I'm not... I got thick enough skin to it's okay. I'm not everybody's cup of tea, as they say. I'm not for everybody. Hey, Jesse, can you see a Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren ticket in 2020? I would like to see something like that. My cough button's too far away. I don't want to lean over. Listen, I think we do need to take a phrase out of Elizabeth Warren's playbook. Structural change. Revolutionary structural change. Whether that be Bernie, whether that be Elizabeth Warren, we need something like that, especially where it relates to health care. Now, I'm not opposed to a phase-in. Let me mute Steve King, the white supremacist. I'm not completely opposed to some kind of a phase-in because my health care comes through the Veterans Administration, which is like a Medicaid for all. I have a provider, a government provider that I go to, and it's not good. It's terrible. So I wouldn't want, for the sake of really actually needy, sick people in America, to have to go through what I go through to try to get a doctor's appointment and health care. So I'm not completely opposed to a phase-in. I really just want to make sure that our progress to Medicaid for all works. I'm healthy. I don't need it right now. But there are millions of people who really desperately need quality health care, and it's a life or death issue. For them, I want to do the right thing. For me, it's not a political football like it is for many people. But going into 2020, other than getting rid of Donald Trump, getting back to the business of our country, I think we need to do what is right, and that is moving to a Medicare for all system. If every modern industrialized country on the planet can get it right, and we're the richest nation in the history of the planet, why can't we? It doesn't make any sense. And to equivocate, like Delaney, Bennett, some of these moderate Democrats, it is selling short people who actually need the help. It's disingenuous, it's un-American, and it's not democratic with a big D, not little d. Sorry, I skipped a whole bunch of questions while I was answering that. Isn't it sad that America is under the illusion of democracy to see Republicans blatantly disregard the Constitution? Yeah, listen, democracy doesn't mean one particular thing. They have a different system in Great Britain, and they're a democracy. I do believe that the Electoral College confounds and complicates our system of democracy, and I think it's unnecessary anymore, especially considering the map that I showed, that there are only like, let's say, 7 states that have a higher population than Los Angeles County, California, and we're allowing so much power to be concentrated where no one lives. That is a problem. It is anti-democratic. But it doesn't mean we're not a democracy. Maybe I'm splitting hairs here. What do you think the next step for the Dems should be? Where are we here? What do you think the next step for the Dems should be when McComrade acquits Trump in the Senate? Well, then it's going to be move forward with the election. And it's really not, it's not going to be elected Dems that it's up to. It's going to be you and me. Because if this fails in the Senate and he is acquitted and he remains in office, it is going to be up to you and up to me to do everything we can. If you've never donated $5-10 to a political campaign, this will be your moment. The saving of our republic will be up to us, the citizenry, through democracy. And we're going to have to get the vote out in those critical states that I just mentioned. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Arizona, North Carolina, Ohio, Florida. Critical states where there is a makeup of a larger concentration of Trump supporters. It's going to be up to us. Please explain how Republicans just defend Trump but not the rule of law. There's really no way to explain it. They don't care. They're more concerned with power, maintaining power, than they are with defending the Constitution of the United States of America, our system of government, the history of our country. They don't care. There's really no way to explain it. That's very good, Nas. Do you think Trump treated this nation and the administration like The Apprentice? Yeah, he absolutely did. Hilariously so, if it weren't so serious. But, what do you expect when you hire a dumbass game show host to run your country? This should put, for once and for all, to bed the argument that we need a businessman to run the country. He's going to run the country like a business. so stupid. Because the United States isn't a business. We're not trying to turn a profit. The United States is a government that needs to do these things above me, to establish justice, promote the general welfare, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense. Those are the things. that a government should do. Not run a profit, run like a business. It's asinine.
That President Trump had colluded with Russia. That turned out to be false. And then overnight, it was obstruction.
Let me give Clash a little bit more airtime here. Mitch McConnell is a hell of a lot more evil than Trump. That's why we need term limits. I won't address the comparison as to who's more evil. Certainly Mitch McConnell is a problem because he does understand. He's not a dummy like Donald Trump is. Mitch McConnell is a tactician. He is a strategist. He just wrote a book called like The Long Game or something, and that is exactly what he's in this for. He's trying to fundamentally transform our judiciary right now with far right-wing nutterbutters who aren't even qualified, according to the American Bar Association, for their positions on the federal bench. That is what his end game is. He's waiting on pins and needles for the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg because he wants to fill another seat using Donald Trump, who just doesn't care. He does whatever he's told relative to the leadership of the Republican Party. Obviously, he doesn't do what he's told, but he goes along with those agenda items. Taxes, running year after year after year, trillion and more dollar deficits for the foreseeable future because of his tax scam. But that's what they wanted. That's what Paul Ryan wanted. That's what Mitch McConnell wanted. So as far as who's more evil, I'm getting off the rails here. I'm not going to make a judgment on that. But as far as term limits are concerned, I don't know what I believe about it. I used to be staunchly against term limits. I used to have a saying when I was a dumb kid that we do have term limits. They're called elections. Every 2 years and every 6 years for the Senate, we can go to the ballot box and decide to turn someone away. I don't necessarily feel as strident about that as I once did because of the pernicious effect of money in campaigns. I believe we should outlaw corporations giving to political campaigns. Make it illegal. Only citizens, only voters should be able to give to campaigns, and only a limited amount. Because of the fact that if let's say I'm a billionaire, and I want to give $1 billion to a candidate, I shouldn't have more speech than someone who's poorer. It should be a moderate amount. I think the amount that's there right now, let's say it's $2,700, that's what it is now. Let's say we bump it to $5,000, and then that's it per candidate. All of these PACs should go away. It should be individual donations to individual candidates, and that's it. Corporations have no business. It is hard. Let me say this as an aside. This is where I do my podcast from, and I'm usually talking into this mic on the podcast, and it's hard not to drop the F-bomb being in this position where I talk on the show. But I've softened about term limits, having been very much against them. I'm open to them, but I still think the more pressing matter would be to get rid of money in politics. But I'm open to it, not against it. So there you go, Clash. See? I'm not that much of a joke, right?
Here's what nearly every grade school student in America knows, but apparently House Democrats do not.
Hope for days. A republic system allows a country to be democratic. Yeah, no, you're right, Hope. Listen, a republic and a democracy, you hear Republicans always say this, and I don't know what you're here, so I'm assuming you're more of a lefty than a righty. But you hear Republicans all the time say, this is not a democracy, it's a republic. Whenever you hear that, say, well, what does that even mean? What are you trying to communicate? Because who cares what specific system we're under? We are a democratic republic. I don't know. Jasper Casper, I think is. Again, I'm far away from a computer. Talk about the outstanding speech of Nancy Pelosi. It was what the U.S. stands for, not the mobby GOP in the White House. Unfortunately, while she was talking, I think you're talking about when she had the portion of the Pledge of Allegiance next to a U.S. flag on a poster next to her. I didn't catch all of it because I was trying to run around and get the tech figured out for this since I'm a dummy and don't know how any of this BS works. So I missed it. I'll have to recatch it. I'm sure I can find it on the YouTubes. Paul, can we stop hoping that Republicans will convict Trump? Be real. They will never put nation and people before country. Yeah, listen, I'm hoping. I'm never going to lose hope. I think that's a request. Can we stop hoping that I would dismiss out of hand? I will never stop hoping. But, yeah, I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think the Senate's going to convict Donald Trump. Not with Mitch McConnell in there, not with this batch of Republicans. There's too many people they need to sway, and there are too few possibles like Mitt Romney, who, I mean, come on. What kind of a terrible situation are we in where Mitt Romney is the one who's the reasonable one, where Mitt Romney is looked to be like, oh, maybe he'll do the right thing. Ugh. And Richard Russell, the mega corporations are like Al Capone, buying their votes in favors like tax breaks and tax incentives. Yeah, I don't know if anybody watched that last video I did. It did not get very many views, like 20,000 or something, which, that's dickish to say. People have YouTube channels and don't get that kind of viewership. But for usually what I do, I was very proud of that video. The new report that just came out that like 91 companies out of the Fortune 500 not only didn't pay taxes, but got massive tax refunds at the end of the year. Look, in 1952, like 30% or more of U.S. tax dollars were paid by corporations, and now it's like 9% or something. It's something, I don't know the exact number, but it is shockingly low. It is unethically low, untenably low. Sherry Addis, are we a democracy or republic? Well, technically, we're a republic. We elect people to vote for us. Not every single measure that comes down is voted on by the people. We elect representatives. We're representative democracy. That's what we are. But technically, a republic. But it doesn't matter, is what I'm saying. I'm not yelling at you. I'm yelling at every Republican who has said to me in comments or in person, we're not a democracy, we're a republic. What does it matter? That's always what I ask. Moscow Mitch is going to effectively be the foreman, and Roberts will be presiding over the trial. What happens when their views and opinions clash? Could Mitch overrule Roberts? Yeah, absolutely he could, because they set the rules. The Senate creates the rules by which the trial will run. So John Roberts is the presiding officer, and he is going to have to go by the rules. Now, we've never had a case, at least in modern times. I can't speak to the Andrew Johnson 3-day impeachment, but we've never had a situation where there was a contention between a Chief Justice presiding officer and the majority leader of the Senate. So we'll have to see. This is all new territory. Jesse, what do I think about Cenk Uygur? I think Cenk Uygur is the founder and host of the Young Turks, now running for the Democratic congressional seat of California 25. I don't know what you mean. What do I think about him? I mean, ask RJ. Ask again. What exactly do you mean by that? Because I'm happy to answer it. I'm not afraid of my opinions. I'm not sure exactly. I think you're probably asking me, what do I think about the controversy surrounding him right now, and his endorsement by Bernie Sanders that was then withdrawn by Bernie Sanders because of things Cenk wrote, shitty, terrible, stupid things that Cenk wrote 20 years ago or more when he was a Republican, that he has since not only disavowed, but deleted 15 years ago. Look, I'm thankful that I wasn't writing a bunch of stuff online when I was a Republican because, oh, my God, it would be terrible. Terrible, embarrassing. But, listen, he's handling this well. I think we live in a culture where you have to be accountable for the things you've said. And I think he's handling this well. He said on CNN the other day that I'm not a defendant, I'm the aggressor. He's not there to defend himself. He'll make his reason, he'll give his reason for what he did, answer for it, and then he's moving on because that's not what is that's not what is at issue. So I like Cenk. I hope that was what your question was. I actually get accused of sounding like Cenk before I even knew who he was several years ago on my podcast. Saying, of course, is something I say all the time. And somebody called in and goes, you sound like Cenk Uygur. And I was like, who is that? And I had to look it up. And there's like several compilations on YouTube of Cenk Uygur saying, of course. So he and I are simpatico in a couple of different ways. I mean, although he went to Columbia and he's a smart guy, and I'm me. What do you think of left tube overall? Well, these are some good questions. Look, I've got my, I don't watch a ton of other content because I'm very busy doing what I do, but it's good. There's tons of stuff I disagree with, lots of stuff I disagree with, but I think a diversity of thought and a diversity in opinion and a diversity of outlook is a good thing. It only serves to further the mission, further our nation, to hone our opinions, and to make some good policy for America, to make people's lives better. So yeah, I'm okay with it, I guess. I'm really more focused on my stuff. I've actually been asked several times to do like a collaboration with. They've talked about David Pakman, who I don't know. I don't really know any of these people. I know Brian Tyler Cohen from my previous work with Occupy Democrats. But I wouldn't even know what to do. I've asked people if you have a suggestion on what to do, what kind of a collaboration. Yeah, name it. People have said Bo, the Fifth Column, is another guy I don't know. I would be happy to do any of that. Whatever you think would be awesome as far as the audience is concerned, I'm down. But I'm not a creative guy. I am just not. And I'm not a tech guy. I'm, like I said before, I've got the podcast dialed in because I've been doing it for almost 700 episodes. But the YouTube thing's new, relatively new. Thanks, Javon. Javon. Not good with names. If you think a thing with me and Bo of the Fifth Column would be a good idea, then reach out to him. Tweet at him. I'm open to any of that kind of thing. Most creators are open to that kind of a thing because it's going to expose me to a whole new audience and expose him, obviously not with you, to a new audience because you already are aware of him. Uh-oh, he's talking about Jesus.
Jesus the opportunity to face his accusers. During that sham trial, Pontius Pilate afforded more rights to Jesus than the Democrats have afforded this president in this process. I yield back.
That is just shameless. Comparing Donald Trump to Jesus Christ. Come on. Because Trump will be able to face his accusers in the trial in the Senate. The investigation that was just done by Adam Schiff in the House of Representatives is like a grand jury proceeding, which is secret. And I'm not just speaking out of turn. I just got done serving a 1-year stint on a federal grand jury here in Orange County, California. My voice is getting fried. I'm going to have to take a break here in a minute. For a year, every Wednesday for a year, I was in a grand jury room hearing several cases. I understand the grand jury system. That is what it's like. Now we're moving to, this right here is the indictment. They're going to vote like a grand jury, voting for the indictment, and then it's going to go to trial. Donald Trump's going to have plenty of time to face his accusers. That's not what the grand jury system is for, facing accusers. When they have witnesses come in, there is no defense attorney allowed in the room. They can be outside the room, and then when they have questions, like they're admonished of their rights. Do you have an attorney present? Yes, he's outside. Okay, at any time that you want to go consult with your attorney, you can leave the grand jury room, leave the proceedings, and then come back. But the defense attorney isn't allowed in the room. That is, again, going back to what I said earlier, another case where these Republicans are trying to confuse their supporters because they don't think they're smart enough to fully understand what is taking place, to fully understand our system of government, to fully understand or appreciate the Constitution and the process that's been outlined therein. Thankfully, Democrats largely are smarter than that. Red Sox fan, Jesse, how can anyone in the military like Trump after he's disrespected our military generals? I believe he's not just, I mean, yes, you're right, but I'll take it even a step further, Red Sox, that Donald Trump has not just disrespected the military generals, he has disrespected the troops on the ground through his using the military as a prop, as a political prop, with yanking them from Syria, our battle against ISIS. Look, we don't need a full-scale, boots-on-the-ground occupation of a country, but certainly we need to do things right relative to our allies, like the Kurds, who are now being killed by Turkey, a NATO ally. Answer me that. Anyway. But I did just see a poll the other day that actually there is a reversal now relative to the approval of Donald Trump military-wise, and there was a disapproval. So there is a switch happening. But your lower-ranked, your enlisted troops, of which I was, an enlisted guy in the Marine Corps, usually they're more conservative, and then your more college-educated senior officers are going to be more reasonable and understanding of history and everything else that goes into making those types of decisions. Anyway, I'm going to take a break here. I have a little screen that says be right back. I'm just going to go get a glass of water. I'm going to be back in a few minutes, and we will continue this on the other side. I am back. Sorry about that. When you drink a whole bunch of coffee, you end up having to go to the bathroom. And also, my dog had to go to the bathroom. Whole bunch of information you didn't need or want to know. So, let's get back to Congress.
The need to protect against just such abuses prompted our founders to grant the sole power of impeachment to this House. The delicate balance of power that underpins our democracy is threatened when a president disregards the Constitution by obstructing Congress's power to cover up illegal behavior. In doing that, President Trump violated his oath. Today, we must put country over party, conscience over complicity. Today, we must assert no one's above the law. Today, we're summoned by history to do the right thing. I yield back.
Gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Turn off the human banjo. Not that kind of bathroom, Penny. Not that kind of bathroom. So I don't know how much longer I will do this. Actually, I might even turn it off and just go through some of this letter that I haven't read, like I was saying at the beginning. The 6-page letter that Donald Trump wrote to Nancy Pelosi that is filled with, to call it inaccuracies is a misnomer. It's just not quite as accurate as it could be. So I think I'm going to go back to my other camera view, and then I'm going to read this. So if you're interested, great. If not, you can bail on me. That is fine as well. I really enjoy these live streams. I'm going to get better at it. I'm going to understand all of the other elements of this stupid program that I'm not smart about. So let me read first few paragraphs of this, and then I'm going to come back later on when they get a little closer to the vote. So this evening, I will absolutely be back on. This is a letter from Donald Trump dated December 17th, 2019. Dear Madam Speaker, I write to express my strongest and most powerful protest. It's his strongest and most powerful protest, everybody, against the partisan impeachment crusade being pursued by the Democrats in the House of Representatives. This impeachment represents an unprecedented and unconstitutional abuse of power by Democrat lawmakers. It absolutely is a Trump-written document because the capitalization errors are aplenty. Unequaled in nearly 2.5 centuries of American legislative history. The articles of impeachment introduced by the House Judiciary Committee are not recognizable under any standard of constitutional theory, interpretation, or jurisprudence. Donald Trump obviously did have a little bit of help writing this because I don't know that he could pronounce jurisprudence. Certainly wouldn't be able to spell it. They include no crimes, no misdemeanors, and no offenses whatsoever. You have cheapened the importance of the very ugly word, impeachment. God damn. The articles of impeachment introduced by the House... Oh, I just read that. By proceeding with your invalid impeachment, you are violating your oaths of office. You are breaking your allegiance to the Constitution, and you are declaring open war on American democracy. You dare to invoke the Founding Fathers in pursuit of this election nullification scheme. Yet your spiteful actions display unfettered contempt for America's founding, and your egregious conduct threatens to destroy that which our founders pledged their very lives to build. The temerity on this guy. Even worse than offending the Founding Fathers, you are offending Americans of faith by continually saying, quote, I pray for the president, unquote. When you know this statement is not true, unless it is meant in a negative sense, it is a terrible thing you are doing, but you will have to live with it. Not I. Anyway, it goes on like that for apparently 6 pages. I'm not going to read them all now. Maybe I'll just do a video where I read it and just put that up on itself, because this is already over 2 hours. But if you have a few remaining questions before I bail out of here, I'm going to go. Again, I really appreciate and love you guys. It is a special thing, as we were having the argument earlier about privilege. It is a privilege that I have this platform. What began with a podcast, I doubt it, with Dollemore, my podcast that could be found on Apple Podcasts. I don't want to turn it into an advertisement, but that it's not this. Started with the podcast, grew into a YouTube channel where I do a completely separate thing. I feel very lucky. A lot of people would say, oh, I built that on my own. It's all because of me. And that is not the case. I do not believe that. It is only with your support. It is only with your loyalty and interest in the things that I have to say. And actions in the interactions in the comments that I still am able to do this. My opinion on matters of state and matters of government and matters of policy and matters that affect the United States are no more valid or important than yours are. I just happen to have a YouTube channel that people watch. I am truly committed to moving the conversation forward, not just on the podcast, but also here on YouTube, because it matters. It is important. And that is why I've started the One More Thing segment, where I try to amplify your voices. That's why I don't mind mixing up in the comments, answering questions. So your question and your opinion can also be amplified. I don't believe I would be doing a service to what I've been given here with the YouTube channel if I did otherwise. If I didn't allow you also to speak. If it's just me yakking at you, talking to you, that doesn't help anybody. So I appreciate you all very much. You guys are the best. And I'll answer a couple more questions, and then I'm going to go for a few hours and come back, drink some water. It's not even noon, so I can't yet have a glass of whiskey without feeling a little guilty. Avery Santos, do you think a lot of the Republican politicians in Congress are sticking to the ridiculous arguments because they feel they've sunk too much in to give up now? You know, it's kind of that. It's kind of what is commonly in poker called pot committed. You're pot committed. You've already put so much in, you got to see it through. It's kind of that. But I also think it's this, that Donald Trump has so infected the Republican Party, they know that if they go against him, there will be repercussions. And when you have people as dumb as Kevin McCarthy, and I don't just mean that euphemistically, I mean he is not a smart man. When you have people as dumb as Kevin McCarthy as the minority leader of the Senate, the position that he would be speaker if they were in the majority. When you elect a man like that, who will do the bidding of Donald Trump and take away committee assignments, I mean, there would be political ramifications for these Republicans because Donald Trump has infected the Republican Party so much. They don't have courage, political courage, and otherwise. Even men like Will Hurd from Texas, who is an otherwise pretty decent guy relative to his representation. He's not terrible. He's not Doug Collins. He's not Devin Nunes. He's not Jim Jordan. He's like a normal Republican. Even he has bent the knee to Donald Trump relative to the impeachment proceedings. That's a problem. And I wouldn't want to see that even with the Democratic Party. Now we're seeing this Congressman Van House or Van New or whatever his name is in New Jersey, who's switching parties. What is that guy going to gain? Because he's almost certain to get his ass primaried. Or not, he won't even be primaried now because he's Republican, but he's almost certain to lose that seat. I don't understand the political calculations that are being made, and I certainly don't respect them on the part of the Republican Party. They are selling out their country for this arrogant, unethical, criminal monster, white supremacist Donald Trump. And I think that is going to be it. I'm going to go for a while. I love you guys. I appreciate you. And we will we'll do this a little later, just a few hours. So stick around. If you got questions, you can email them to me at onemorething@dollemore.com. Again, onemorething@dollemore.com. I'll be monitoring those. I can answer them when I come back. You can also call in with voice memos that I can just play on the air without all the graphics and all that, because I won't have time to do that. 714-576-4054. You can also, by the way, what we do on the podcast is you can email a voice memo. You can open the voice memo app on your phone, record a voice memo, and email that to onemorething@dollemore.com. Love you guys. Appreciate you. And we'll see you in a little bit.